Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome once more to the California-Nevada chat. And here on Friday, February 17th. Thanks once again for joining us. My name is Len Dumas, Executive Director for the Northern California PGA section. And on behalf of ourselves and our Southern California partners, Executive Director Nikki Gatch and the team and our on-air team of Steve Monday, Bryce Seaver, and Shelby Zoe, we look forward to another great session today. And our guests today are Christy Young, and Christy is the Director of Treasury and Risk Management for the PGA of America, and to talk to us about the Deferred Compensation Plan, which is pretty much historic in terms of everything that's been accomplished, certainly in the past few years. We'll get the details on that from Christy. And Craig Kessler, the Director of Public Affairs for the Southern California Golf Association. As many of you know, Craig has been with us since the start of our podcast. And actually today is the deadline here with the California legislators. So we look forward to input from Craig on what's happening on the calendar and things that we need to pay attention to as we go forward. But in the meantime, some opening remarks from our friends and colleagues, and we'll start with our section president, Mr. Eric Lippert. Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Len. Good morning, everybody. These chats have been fantastic. They're just providing fantastic information, and they have been, and it's been a great thing that you guys have put together a while back. So I just wish everybody a happy Friday, and look forward to another great session. And I think this deferred compensation, I would just echo what you said. I think it could be a real game changer for recruitment as we go down the road. So I'm very, very excited to see how it lays out, how it rolls out. And, I think our one big thing, and I would guarantee Christy would probably say something similar, is down the road. This is very new. So there's going to require some patience to some level. But I think the overarching view is that this is going to be a huge positive game changer for our organization. So thank you, Christy, for being with us today.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric and Lynn. We really appreciate you having me on. And like you said, this is something new and historic and, really an exciting time for us. As you know, we've asked the IRS for years and years to be able to have some kind of retirement program for our members, and we've always gotten the word no, right? Somehow we've been just kept going, and about a year ago, we finally got the IRS to say yes. So they've agreed to a plan. It's pretty structured, but it will evolve. As you said, it's new and it's going to keep changing. So I want to go on to the next slide. Right, so the plan really is to be able to reasonably compensate members for really just specifically growing the game of golf. And that's how we got it approved through the IRS. It was specific to growing the game of golf. Members have to participate in certain activities, and these activities were all approved, right? And they earn points, and those points turn to dollars to contribute to a retirement account. The goal of this is it's not going to be your entire retirement account. It's going to be a supplement to your retirement account, right? You're still going to have your, if you have a 401k, if you have other IRAs, that type of thing. But this is going to supplement that, and we hope very well. And it is going to be available for distributions once you reach age 65. So we started registrations at the PGA show. So you can go on right now and register through pga.org under the deferred compensation page. Registrations are open now through the end of the plan year. So the plan year starts April 1st. So then you'll start earning points. You'll earn points throughout the plan year till March 31st. And that's the plan year. It's eligible for all members in good standing. If you're in a class F or an associate or university student, those are not eligible, but it is eligible for all other members in good standing. Next page. So what is deferred comp, right? So deferred comp is basically you're setting aside money that you've earned to be used at a later date. It usually starts at retirement. So in our plan, it starts at the age of 65. And deferred comp can be any type of deferral of income. It could be a retirement plan, pension plans, that type of thing. This is in addition to all of those. The benefits of deferred comp is it's tax deferred until you retire or until you take the distribution. The plan is going to be able to be invested. So you'll be able to select from, I think it's 32 different investments that we'll have available for you to invest your money, and you get to choose how you do that. And again, it's supplemental to future income, and all the contributions to this plan come directly from the PGA. Next page. Okay, so throughout the year, you earn points, you get money, your contributions go directly into your account. There are no other contributions can go into that account. The maximum amount you can earn throughout the year is $1,500, and we'll go into how you earn that. It's a little bit different through a point system, and then the points get converted. The $1,500 is a maximum set by the IRS, so that's the maximum for this current plan year. It does depend on different factors, how much you earn, right? So as I said, there's a points program. You have to earn points throughout the year. Then at the end of the year, those points get converted to dollars. Basically, it's the total dollar pool divided by the number of members and the number of points that are earned. So you've got the money in when you get it out, right? So once you hit 65, the funds will start being distributed. So it's a distribution, monthly distribution over a 10-year period from the time you're 65 to 75. So no taxes are withheld on your distributions or when you put the money in, but you will be giving a 1099 each year after the distributions. There's no loans and no rollovers permitted within the plan. So it's not like a typical 401k where you can build up the balance and then take a loan out and then pay it back. We're not doing that. This is just strictly contributions and distributions once you're 65. Next page. Okay, so the point system. So the point system was really developed by a group of members, section EDs, the board, and it covers all three areas. So it's coaching, management, education. So you'll earn points throughout the year. The points, there's 16 different activities, and you can earn between I think it's 12 points up to 250 points per activity. And there's a whole list of activities. We can go through those in a minute. You have to earn at least 200 points throughout the year. If you earn less than 200 points, those points will be forfeited, and they don't roll over for the next plan year. They're just gone and you'll have to start over. So what we've done is we've created a new app. It's great. Our technology department is creating this app where you very easily can go in. We're going to be able to register now. The app is going to be available April 1st. It'll download it to your phone and you'll be able to easily record your points. All 16 items will be in the app, and you can choose your activity. You can choose your activity level because each activity has a different level of earnings. And then that records those points. Now you've recorded the points. You also have to have another member attest to those points. So if I record points for, say, a junior league coach, then I would ask another member to attest that, yes, we knew that Christy did that activity and she earned those points. Next page. So we've compiled a list of frequently asked questions, and all of this information is on pga.org. I've gotten a few questions here, but there's a long list and we keep adding to it as people, as more members sign up and they send us questions, we'll add it to the list, and hopefully it'll be pretty comprehensive. But you can also always send us more questions at deferredcompensation@pga.com. Anyway, so the first question that was always asked is, so once I earn these dollars, where does it go? So we've asked Corebridge Financial, who currently administers the GRP program, to also administer the deferred compensation plan, right? So if you already have a Corebridge Financial GRP account, you earn these points, and second account will be created. The dollars will be kept separate, but it will be in Corebridge, and you'll be able to see both accounts when you log in. And keep in mind one other question, and it might be down the road a little bit, but GRP is still a program that's very much alive, and it does not go away. It stays there. You can participate in both GRP and deferred comp. When and how can I enroll, right? So enrollment is now. Get out there, enroll, go on to PGA.org, go under deferred comp, get started. It's pretty simple. It takes, less than 2 minutes. We had quite a few people at the show sign up right there on the show floor. And we've had significant improvement in that sign up right now. So we want to get that number as high as we can. Next question about your 401k. This does not impact your 401k. It doesn't impact GRP. It's a totally separate plan. Next slide. So again, relating to GRP, as I said, it's a separate plan. It doesn't impact GRP at all. When will I receive the funds earned? So the plan year is from April 1st through March 31st of 2024. There is a recording period of time, right? So you perform an activity, we're giving you 60 days after the end of that activity to get your points recorded and to get your other member to attest to those points, right? So if the plan year ends March 31st, 60 days later, and then another 60 days for us to audit, compile the points into dollars. And so the funds will be distributed to your new account by August of 2024. When you start looking at the points program, a lot of people are like, how come I don't have this activity on it? Why is there not this activity on it? As I said, the activities were all approved by the IRS. We know that it's not perfect. We know that there's room for improvements, and we're going to constantly look for those improvements and constantly go back and try to tweak those activities and add new ones as we see needed. Next slide. So if you have your phone out, you can quickly scan this QR code and it'll take you directly to the registration site. We ask everybody to do that today. Again, we can go through some of those activities, and I'd like to just open it up to some questions. All of the activities are listed on PGA.org. All this information is on PGA.org. And we hope you all sign up and we'll start earning those points. So Lynn, do you want to open it up for questions?
Well, I have some, Christy, thank you. And again, this is a reminder, this is available to all PGA members, right, that are in good standing, the ability to sign up, correct?
Correct.
Great. And then depending upon where they are age-wise, some could be those that are 65 and over could actually begin earning and receiving the distributions. Yeah.
Correct. If you're over 65, the money will go into your account and then it will be distributed back out of the account that same year. So if you earn the whole $1,500, you're going to get it in the same year. So you don't have to wait. The plan is really geared to our younger members that can really take advantage of the compounding interest, right? So if you're 25, 30 years old and you invest $1,500 a year for 30 years, at the end of that period of time with all that compounding interest on top of interest, you're going to have a nice little, supplement to your retirement. Those in, 60, 65, the $1,500, hey, it covers your dues every year. So it's still a benefit to you as well.
Right. Christy, so the April 1 kickoff is really tied to the PGA of America fiscal year. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. So it follows the PGA's fiscal year.
Okay. And in a plan now, we have the contributions, $1,500, and then the interest, the earnings. Upon withdrawal, Christy, are both taxed, or is it just the earnings that are taxed?
Yes, both are taxed, but the goal always is you defer those taxes till a later time period, and typically when you're retired you're earning less, and so your taxable income percentage is less as well.
Right. Okay. And Christy, each year there's not right? There's not a set amount, I don't believe there is, of the total pot for each year. So how would that be calculated? Yeah.
Correct. So before the beginning of the plan year, so before April 1st of this year, the PGA board will approve the dollar amount for the distribution at the end of the plan year. So every year they'll set that dollar amount. The IRS has set a total amount limit, but that can grow for inflation at, I believe, 3% currently. So it will change a little bit, as will the $1,500. The $1,500 is year one. That could possibly grow based on inflation, but the total pool will be set before April 1st of every year.
Okay, Nikki, I think you have a question. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of along the same lines, Lynn. Thank you. Christy, you mentioned that, the criteria for earning points and credits was approved by the IRS. How often will we be reevaluating that from an association standpoint? And then how frequently will we be able to represent criteria to the IRS for approval?
So we'll reevaluate it annually, right? And so even now we're asking the section EDs for their input on the current point system. So it's set for this year. We'll make some tweaks for next year, and then probably sometime after that, we'll go back to the IRS if we feel like we need to add additional activities. So we can tweak it a little bit each year, and we'll probably go back to the IRS as needed, but we'll monitor that very closely.
Okay, thank you.
Christy, would you discuss two things? One is some of the activities themselves, and many of the activities are those that, as are mentioned in the slides, already happening at the facilities. And then two, the sharing of the points, if you will, at a facility when there is more than one member involved.
Right. So really there's no sharing of points. So multiple people can earn the same points. So if you take like a junior league team coach, you have multiple coaches within one league. They can each earn up to 75 points. But those points can be distributed based on the performance level, right? So that 75 points, if you're not a full coach, but you support a team, you might get half of that 75 points. If you're a team captain or a coach of a full league, that level can go up to 250 points. So it's not where you're splitting out one activity's points between multiple people. Multiple people can earn the same amount of points. Another activity that's we feel like is something that everyone can get is if you have a coach profile on PGA.org, right? You can earn up to 100 points on that coach profile by performing certain activities within that. So you can earn 50 points just by going in and setting up your profile. So if you don't have a profile, go in and set one up, you get 50 points. If you already have a profile, go in, make sure it's updated, and then you also can earn 50 points. So I think there's different activities for, as we said, whether you're in coaching or management or operations, there's an activity out there and enough activities out there that everyone can get to the minimum 200 points.
Yeah, interesting, Christy, that point that you just mentioned. So it's kind of in the bank just by setting up the profile and registering. There's 100 points halfway to the goal. Is there some magic to that minimum of 200 point number, or how is that calculated?
Yeah, it was calculated based on, we want people to do more than one activity. Although if you're a coach, full league coach, you can just be a coach and do 250 points. But again, that's the minimum threshold. So it was approved by the IRS, and they felt like we needed to make sure people are doing enough activities to grow the game of golf.
Christy, how are signups? I know, having been at the show in Orlando and our conferences, we had some people sign up right there. How are signups across the country at the moment?
We had a great increase, and I should have gotten that number for you this morning. I think we were over 1,500 earlier this week, so I'm not sure how high it is now, but I can get you that number. But Seth and John sent an email out earlier this week, and the number probably quadrupled with that email. So we're hoping to get the word out. We've just really started pushing communications. This is the first podcast. I have another one scheduled in 2 weeks with the Carolina section. So we're looking forward to that. And we're really hoping that we get more and more members to sign up. It does start April 1st. So you don't have to sign up today, but we're trying to monitor that and see how many folks we get signed up before the April 1st start.
Awesome. So it was the conversations with the IRS, because you're really based on, or maybe that's not the way to say it. Maybe it's, with the tour players, right? Having the retirement plan with the PGA Tour. I believe that was somewhat of the basis of the thinking to talk with the IRS on that sense of a non-employee, if you will, having an opportunity to take advantage of a retirement program.
Yeah, that helped. And I wasn't involved in all of those conversations with the IRS, but it definitely helped. But, it specifically for us growing the game of golf, which is a little bit different than the tour's goals. And so we had to really work with them on the tax issues, the NERMIT issues through the nonprofit organization that we are. And so we worked with the IRS to really structure it just for growing the game of golf and activities that relate to that.
Great. Well, I know a lot of work was done, Christy, so thanks to you and the team. As we said, this is pretty historic as we look at the nature of our organization. Again, for some of us, we're employees of the section, but not of the PGA of America. There are 29,000 members and associates, and this is an opportunity to do exactly that. To have a plan structured around folks, many of whom are not employees or otherwise related to the home office, if you will.
Correct, right. This is for the members out there, and we're really excited that we were able to get this up and running. We got it approved through the IRS. We spent a lot of this last year working on the program, working on the communications, working on the app. But everybody at the headquarters is really excited to roll this out and see where it goes.
Hey, Christy, so a question just came in. Does 200 points equal $1,500?
No, so it doesn't. So it's an allocation at the end of the year. So depending on how many members participate and how many points are totally earned, we'll take that number and take the pot of the allocated dollars amount and allocate it down to those points. So depending on how many members participate and how many points are earned, that's the allocation. We don't know what that is at this point, right? And we won't know that till the end of the plan year.
And which will be March of 2024.
Correct, March of 2024.
Right. Great. Okay, Christy, well, thank you. Again, thanks to the team and everyone for getting this passed. We have the code up, and we'll leave it up there for a little bit so everybody can take that photo and register. And then, Christy, any closing thoughts or final words of advice to us all?
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having us. And we really look forward to the plan. We know it's not going to be perfect. We know there's some work we'll need to do with the IRS going forward. But it's a great start, and everyone's really excited to be able to roll this out April 1st.
Okay, Christy, well, thanks again for joining us, and happy weekend in Florida, and we'll stay in touch and see you during the season, I'm sure.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Take care.
Thanks.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for that. And Christy, of course, you're welcome to stay. And we will have, as we start to wrap up, Bryce or Steve will put the code back up again one more time before we break today. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our own Craig Kessler, Director of Public Affairs for the Southern California Golf Association. And Craig, as we talked on our CAG, California Alliance for Golf Legislative Committee call this morning, today is a deadline for bill submission. So I ask you to talk about that and then some of the bills that are on the horizon that we need to know about.
Well, thanks, Len. I'm going to talk about two things. First, about the legislative session. Second, everyone's favorite topic that's will always be with us, I think, in California, and that's water and drought and the Colorado River Compact. But before I do, those of you who are expecting the new chief operating officer of the PGA of America, because we do have the same name, might be a little bit disappointed that they're listening to me. It should be interesting because when the other Craig Kessler was chief operating officer of Topgolf, we often got each other's emails and we're kind of flummoxed by that. I hope that doesn't happen again when he moves permanently into the chief operating position, but we'll see how that goes. Anyone who looked at the photo that came out with the press release understood immediately that it was a different guy. Either that or they were making inquiries about my plastic surgeon because he's quite a bit younger than I am. So Linda, first things first, today is the last day for both assembly members and state senators to file bills for the 2023 session. We've already begun tracking some bills and building an Excel file of those things of interest that we'll look at during the session. There are two bills that particularly that come to mind that have already come up that I'll talk about that are in somewhat of a definitive form. But before I get to that, I want to point out that a lot of the bills that get filed will have a subject. There are different varieties of them. I like to call them all spot bills because it just indicates a subject and an intent. That means that they're not really fleshed out, but they do alert us that this is a topic we'll be looking at. And we're particularly looking at, we have some very good intelligence and some credible rumors that there are bills that are going to be filed, probably if they weren't filed yesterday, they might be filed today, that will re-explore the whole issue of further restrictions of water that's made available to non-functional turf. Now, I think everyone on this call either knows or should know that turf, that golf courses are part of that small family of functional turf because it's part of a business or recreation operation. But among the family of those of functional turf, the golf is probably the one that, truth be known, there are some legislators who would like to put us in the non-functional category. But so we'll pay close attention because it can be a pretty rough and tumble process as these things go through committee, and particularly if it comes out, if these things, if our intelligence is accurate and they come out in the form of spot bills, it means that there's a lot of meat that can be put on these rather scant bones as they come out. The two bills that have been filed, I think, of very specific interest. One of them raises again the issue. If this were a crowd of superintendents, you'd immediately know what I was talking about, but this audience may not. And that is in last year's session, a bill made it all the way to the governor's desk that would have banned the use of neonicotinoids for non-agricultural functions. Agriculture was exempted. Governor Newsom vetoed the bill, and interestingly, part of his veto message was that he felt that it was the agricultural use that was much more prevalent than the non-agricultural use, of course, of which golf courses are even a small part of. And it seemed to be on that basis that he sent it back. This bill, which has already been filed, proposes a study, not of agricultural use, but of precisely what the governor thought was less important, non-agricultural use, and a study that's to be completed by July 1st of 2024, envisaging maybe a ban by sometime in 2026. We will track that very carefully. Learned this morning from the Golf Course Superintendents Association that understands the details of these kinds of bills better than we do, that what's really the problem with the bill is less the subject matter, neonicotinoids, than the fact that some groups are proposing that the metric for determining the ban would be substantially lessened, and if applied to other pesticides, might bring a whole class of things that are that have been deemed safe to use in the golf community unsafe based on the new standard. I share that with you because Often what's often overlooked if you're not in this space every day is this is where the details of policy are really made, and they're made in the small details. And so you don't always see it in the headlines. You may not always pick it up upon the first reading of the bill. The second bill that's in a very mature form is another housing bill. And no, it does not directly aim at golf, but this one purports to correct a previous piece of legislation, Senate Bill 35, which has become sort of the leading piece of legislation for creating ministerial processes. What that's a short-term phrase, which means that you don't need an environmental review. You don't even, it obviates all sources of local control. Simply, you meet certain standards, you apply for a permit, and you can build. And the local city or county has no say. The local planning commission no say. The environmental process is either bypassed or you can go through a simple negative deck process that's expedited, or in which the time frame is truncated. And what my understanding of SB 35 is that it posed two problems practical problems for constructing affordable housing. One was the actual percentage of affordable housing, and the other was a rather onerous labor standard. Much more than prevailing wage. I won't go into the details of that. They're fairly complicated. This bill proposes to lessen the wage requirements. And while it has the support of the carpenters union for obvious result, it has the opposition at this point on that basis from the building trades. My experience in Sacramento, which is which is somewhat limited, is that if the building trades oppose something, it does not have a chance in the California Assembly or in the body politic. I think what we're probably looking at on that bill is a replay of a very successful housing bill last year that was sponsored by Buffy Wicks in the Assembly, that really broke through that labor log jam and found sort of the sweet spot of satisfying everyone and created a lot of opportunities to build housing. We're tracking it carefully because I hope all of you remember Assembly Bill 672 in 1910, because those were a variation of obviations of or nixings of all local zoning prerogative and so forth, and along with some subsidies that would have singled out municipal golf courses and only municipal golf courses for development. We called that the Public Golf Endangerment Act, and I think we should be proud of the way in which we were able to come together as a community or as an industry statewide and defeat that. But we're always taking a close look at the bevy of bills, and there have been many of them since 2019 that remove all the barriers that have been created by local cities, local counties, and local planning commissions, environmental processes, which in the minds of, I think that the consensus is, those are the things that have really added to the expense of creating housing in California and literally added to the possibility. And since that is, by all metrics, our number one problem, we pay close attention to that. Very specifically, the degree to which the Surplus Land Act, which is the greatest protection for publicly owned golf courses in the state, continues to be sort of lessened, or the priorities that are contained with that, right? Still, the high priority is for recreation and open space, but increasingly moving up the priority scale is housing. And it won't be long, and it may be this session, it may be the next session, in which all housing applications take precedence over all recreation or open space applications. So we look very carefully at that. And we do because if this phrase offends some, good, it's meant to offend you, because the degree to which too many look at us as golf as too much land that uses too much water, that serves the interests of the too few who have had too much for too long, we always need to pay attention to that easy temptation to make incursions into the golf stock that's in this state at the expense of putting other things into the mix. If everything is put into the mix and made susceptible or amenable to housing, we have no option but to support that. And we might lose a couple of golf courses as a result, but but golf won't be disproportionately or singled out for that purpose. So we're watching that carefully. We'll see what else comes out in the mix. The good news is we've heard no rumor. We've seen no bills, at least not yet. We've seen no amendments. And there could be a gut and amend at the end. We'll always watch for that. But we haven't seen any of that akin to 1910 last year. I'd like to think it's because we put up such an excellent campaign, and it was a good one, against it, that maybe all sort of enthusiasm for doing that again has been chilled in Sacramento, and that would be a good thing, or it could just be dumb luck, and I don't mind counting on that moving forward. But we're on top of things. We're paying attention. We do. COVID is completely over, and a group of, and that'll include some from the end, certainly Len DeMoss and I hope Nikki Gatch, but certainly a lot of persons from all of the golf organizations in the state that form the California Alliance for Golf are planning to traipse around Sacramento on March 29th in a Capitol Day on which we visit a lot of offices. And between now and then, I think we'll jointly develop some kind of what we'll call it a 2023 legislative strategy or set of priorities, or maybe a couple of bills. It'll probably be some broad themes, and the broadest of the themes that will be in it will be the second topic I'd like to talk about, and that is water. Doesn't matter. One thing about water, it doesn't matter what kind of golf course you are, what kind of golf club you are, where you are in the state. Water is a key concern. I'd say it's probably the central concern of the entire golf industry in the Southwest. Now, it looks like we're having the good news. If you read the reports, all the notion that our snowpack would produce less water because we're warmer and drier than we used to be has been turned on its head this year, because it's been uncommonly cold, and that becomes a self-replicating cycle of even more cold. So the incredible snow we've had, we're at 200% of the snowpack right now, is going to stay intact and melt the way it's supposed to melt when we come to spring. Already we're seeing the benefits of our reservoirs rising, and we can look forward to, and already the allocation from the State Water Project is up to 30%, and I expect that to continue to go up as the year goes on. In short, a few months ago, we were all really concerned because we were coming off the three consecutive driest years that in hundreds, in centuries in California. And if we were looking at a fourth year like that, I had already warned the United States Golf Association that when the U.S. Open comes to the Los Angeles Country Club in June, if we're in level 5 or level 6 drought in the city of Los Angeles, there will be no exceptions for the National Golf Championship, and you better get ready with a narrative that talks about the virtues of a very, very deep brown golf course. Mother Nature bailed us out big time in California, and that's good news. Is it a one-time anomaly? It'll help, fill our reservoirs, and we'll go back to dry years. Nobody knows, and nobody can predict the future, but we do know we're in a sort of, in the last quarter century, in a bit of a drying and warming pattern, even though this year is a glorious exception. So we have to probably err on the side of assuming that's going to maintain and act accordingly. Now, there's another half of the equation that affects much more the southern half of the state than the northern half of the state, which is more dependent upon the Sierra Nevada and Mother Nature in many ways, which can be fairly fickle. But Southern California, it depends as much upon the Colorado water off the Colorado River as it does off of for imported supplies as it does off the Sierra snowpack. And that weather pattern, while the Rockies have done a little better this year, the Wasatch with its snowpack, it's a fraction of the kind of beneficence that Mother Nature has showered on us. Excuse all the bad puns, please. On us in California. So that particular basin, for roughly 23 years now, the meteorologists tell us that the last quarter century in the Colorado Basin is the driest in over 1,500 years. put that against the fact that the allocations that were originally created in 1922 among the 7 states of the basin, 3 of which are considered the reclamation states or the lower basin. Those are the 3 that interest us the most, and that's Nevada, Arizona, California. It was based in 1922 on a sense that there were 17 million acre feet always going to be available off that river. Problem was it was closer to, it was more like 14.5 to 15 million acre feet, even when we divvied it up among the states in 1922. Keeping in mind on the original divvy, California was a fairly substantial state in terms of population, agriculture, and urbanization, but a fraction of what it is today. Las Vegas didn't exist, and Arizona had only been in the Union for 10 years, and Phoenix, which is one of the largest cities, metropolitan areas in the United States now, was a truck stop back in 1922. So as years went on, and particularly when the canals were brought on 40 years ago or 30 years ago into Arizona, funded in large part by California, I might add, just as an aside for those listening from Arizona, that an allocation paradigm that made no sense really has made no sense. And then with the drying and warming of the climate, it looks like it's no more than 12 to somewhere between 12, 13, maybe as many as 13.5 million acre feet are produced annually by the river. Well, if the allocation rights are 17 million, and those rights, if anyone has any understanding of water law in the Southwest, it's layer upon layer upon layer. And even when we add new layers, that doesn't repeal the previous layers. Or even here in California, where we have a Groundwater Sustainability Act, which reposes certain authority in these sustainability agencies, the act itself says nothing about this act repeals or in any way obviates the common law water rights of the previous holders. On the other hand, there's always another hand in water law. The governor's emergency order right now gives, on an emergency basis, gives precisely that authority. We think maybe, and of course, always the problem when someone says we think maybe, we're talking about litigation when it gets to it. And by the way, that's already happened in Southern California's most critically overdrafted basin, and that's entire Ventura County, after spending 3 to 4 years of particularly agricultural community, but other communities as well, including the cities that make use of groundwater in Ventura County. They're now involved in litigation. Everything fell apart and they're in court. And of course, the rulings that come out of that will affect all the other basins, the rest of which for the most part are medium priority or less in Southern California. But that's not true in the northern part of the state or in the Central Valley or particularly the Central Coast, where there are a number of critically overdrafted basins. So the precedents that come out of the Ventura County suit, which was just filed a matter of weeks ago and made public only a matter of days ago, will affect how things happen in those jurisdictions as well. But getting back to sort of the topic at hand, the Colorado River Basin, right now, the 7 states are supposed to be working together, according to the Federal Bureau of Reclamation, to come to agreement. And we've come to agreement many times in the past. And I want to add, I'm a Californian. California has voluntarily at many junctures, most recently in 2003, given up, and again in 2019, given up rights on the Colorado water to which it absolutely has rights in deference to the fact that Arizona and Nevada are much larger than they used to be. And probably when the original Colorado Compact was put together, it would have behooved everyone to have done it by percentages rather than specific acre feet. So we've gotten down to a point where the federal government's decided that 2 to 4 million acre feet of draws have to be voluntarily given back or otherwise given back. I'm not sure what that means, in fairly short order, or Lake Mead and Lake Powell in particularly will lose their ability to generate electricity. And I suppose the lights will go off in Phoenix. We can't allow that, cannot be allowed to happen. But these things are, are precious. I mean, it's become a little hackneyed or corny at this particular point, but there really is Mark Twain really was ahead of his time when he said that, in the American West, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. And I think we're going to see increasing fights over these kinds of things. And probably the federal government's going to have to come in and restore order. the way things stand right now, 6 states have come up with a plan that the bottom line of which is California gives up a disproportionate amount of its rights in order to make this thing come out okay. And California has issued something stating that we will always keep Lake Mead and Lake Powell above dead pool stage. But beyond that, the compromise is, with one and only one state giving up everything is not California's idea of compromise. And then with a vague threat that the law of the river, which is nothing more than an accumulation of all the pacts that have been signed and all the rights that are in place for more than 100 years prevail, we could take it all. And so that's where things stand right now. I would call it posturing in anticipation of some final negotiations that with any luck will come to terms. But I wanted everyone to understand that despite all of the great weather and despite being bailed out by Mother Nature and how well things are going, and that's good news for the State Water Project and some of the sources, at the end of the day, there's still this structural problem, which is a key component of the imported universe, at least particularly in the central and southern part of the state, that is not going to be bailed out by Mother Nature. In fact, quite the opposite. Mother Nature seems to be conspiring against us to continue to drain that particular source, which is why it's all that much more important, whether it's desalination in San Diego County or Orange County, potable reuse in Orange County and LA County, stormwater capture and aquifer recharge. All of the areas of the southern part of the state have been actively, and I would also add, in a way in which perhaps Arizona has not been all those years, and maybe I'm giving away a little of my prejudices or partisanship here, but that's part of the scramble. That's good news because it means we have within our grasp an understanding of the technologies necessary to exploit more local sources, the chief of which is stormwater capture. Having said that, that's not an inexpensive proposition. Californians' first 70 years of the 20th century spent an inordinate amount of money on building the infrastructure of a 20th century that allowed California to grow to 40 million souls and become the 5th largest economy in the world. Though the conditions have changed and that infrastructure there needs to be replaced by a 21st century infrastructure. And I think everyone understands the costs of building things in the 21st century are a whole lot higher in real dollars, not just inflation adjusted dollars, in the 21st century than they were in the 20th. And for an industry like California that like golf in California, in which water is such a key component of our expense lines, it doesn't take a genius to do the math and recognize that in addition to the environmental compliance expenses that we incur, the much higher labor expenses right now, you add the fact that for as far as our eyes can see, the expenses of water are going to continue to go up because the ratepayers end up paying, at least in part, for the infrastructure that is involved in the 21st century techniques of water storage and capture and so forth, and those kinds of things. And again, so I'll simply close that when there are things like Measure W, which was on the 2018 ballot in the county of Los Angeles, which ultimately 71% of Angelenos, county Angelenos, voted to tax themselves on their property tax to create some of that infrastructure. And that was designed, almost looked like it was designed by the golf industry because of the way it's applied. I would simply suggest to all of you, it's not a question of whether those things go up, it's a question of how they get paid for. And the degree to which they can get paid for on things like Measure W in LA County, and there's some parallels elsewhere that are eminently fair to a sector which is mostly permeable surfaces that are grass, or I might add, courtesy of our neighboring Senator Kirsten Sinema, there were $4 billion extra put in the Inflation Reduction Act that can be used only by Nevada, California, and Arizona for conservation projects. And if you look closely at the language, unlike some of the language at the national level with FEMA, the so-called syntax, for those of you who track these things, the language here is structured so that golf could use it. The only place I'm aware that's even thinking about that's the Coachella Valley. Not a surprise. 120 golf courses is a substantial portion of the economy in that place and only that place. Everywhere else, at least in the southern part of the state, and I'm going to guess most of the rest of the state, golf is a mere speck on the economic horizon, on the economic map of each one of these areas. Again, except that. So it's going to be a difficult job to persuade that golf ought to be one of the users of this $4 billion largesse. That kind of wraps it up for water. Yeah, some of the news is good. The news is good in the sense that we would have been really, if 2023 winter, January, February had looked like 2022 or 2021, we would be in a crisis stage right now. And that's fairly frightening to think that we could be back in this crisis stage at some point in the future. And so we got bailed out. That's a good thing. We are not going to get bailed out on the Colorado Basin, and that's a significant part of the One Water portfolio. Keep that in mind as well. And do keep in mind that at all times that, you know, I get wrapped up, and I think a lot of persons get wrapped up into defining advocacy as what bills are we looking at, what specific regulations, what water allocations are we looking for, and to be sure, those are part of it. But the greater challenge every day is the degree to which we can chip away at that perception that regards golf as nothing more than encumbering too much land that uses too much water to serve the interests of the too few who have had too much for too long. If people believe that, and there are those who do, then we're in trouble. The rest becomes mostly an ability to react to bad things. The degree to which they understand golf is bringing societal value to the communities in which golf courses are located, whether that golf course is a municipal course, a daily fee course, or a private club. If they think it brings value to the community, to a community beyond the 10% of the population that plays golf, things will go fairly well for us. The good thing, the one thing we discovered in the 1910 campaign and the 672 campaign of the year before that was that there were more urban legislators that had a positive, there were many who had a positive view of us. We tend to focus on those who had this negative view, and we should, but we're not likely to persuade the most ideological among them, including the author of the bill. The good news is the author of the bill was term limited. Well, actually not term limited out. She determined with 2 years to go, she would make a run for Congress and did not prevail. Her district was slightly redrawn, and the person who captured that district, Blanca Pacheco of Downey, is a golfer and is well disposed towards the societal value proposition of golf in the district she represents, not hostile towards it. And that's good news. And that's probably the most important thing that we can do every day, and particularly because golf professionals, many of the impressions that people will take away about what we're about will come through you if they stop at a golf course, or come through you in a community as you go out there, because they know you more than they know me, particularly in small communities. So keep that in mind, that it's much more a long slog of an image game. Now, that particularly incendiary statement I used with the too many twos in it, I'm not going to repeat it again. There is a lot of misperception in that, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, there's some perception in that, and we have to chip away. We can challenge the misperceptions with the truth, but as far as the perceptions goes, that's really our task. The degree to which we don't like that perception, we need to go out there and we need to consciously change it. And if we can do that, things will continue to go up for us. Because, and I'll close with this, particularly in the water realm, I'm aware what I fear is public opinion, because that will take us down, because ultimately that will work its way through the body politic and down to the regulators. I don't fear the regulators. They seem to understand what we do, and most of them have a pretty good view of us. And particularly as they compare us to other water consumptive industries, apparently, we're much more responsible and certainly more cooperative. Let's keep that up moving forward. That'll put us in good stead. And then long-term together in whatever we do in the industry, we have a role in upping our image and tackling those perceptions a little bit. Well, with that long filibuster on what I thought would be fairly short and only two subjects, I will yield the floor, Len, and if you've got some questions, Nikki, I'd be happy to answer them, but I promise really short answers.
Thank you, Craig. That was tremendous. Along with our great state of California, how big we are, how many people we are, it's very complex at the same time. So we really appreciate that you're making sure we understand what's happening and what is coming up many times that we need to pay attention to. So thanks again, Greg, once again for being with us on this Friday. And Steve or Bryce, if you're able to repost the slide, please, with the QR code. There it is. Awesome. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer, the Southern California PGA, Nikki Gatch. Nikki?
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Craig, as always, for the great update and insight and education. Thanks to Christy. I don't know if she's still on with us. Christy, thanks for being on and talking about deferred comp. We've been hearing about it for a couple of years, and it's nice to see it, finally come to fruition, and will be a great opportunity for so many of our PGA members. So thank you. We encourage all of you to sign up as quickly as possible and be rewarded for all the great things that you do. Thanks everybody for joining us. It's an exciting week here in Southern California as the tour wraps up the West Coast swing just down the road from us at Riviera. For those of you on Tiger Watch, I think he's even through hole 11 last time I looked. But really exciting stuff yesterday for the game of golf, and really the year is off to a great start. Our next chat is scheduled for March 17th, so be sure to wear your green on St. Patty's Day. We're very fortunate to have the USGA's Mike Wan with us. We'll also have a gentleman from the Outlier Group, which manages the 2 LPGA tour events that will be visiting Southern California in the LA area in March and April. And then, of course, we've got the US Open in our backyard at LA Country Club this June. I'm sure Mr. Wan will be talking about. We'll be looking to get the other Craig Kessler to join us, the new Chief Operating Officer of the PGA of America. We'll hopefully schedule him in April. So more to come on that. But thanks everybody for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Nikki. And ladies and gentlemen, glad that you spent your time with us here on Friday morning. And as Nikki mentioned, good things at Riviera. Looks like Keith Mitchell is under at the moment, and Max not started yet, but I'm sure it's going to be a great weekend. Certainly with Tiger there. Christy, thank you. Greg, thank you. And President Lippert, Eric, thank you for joining us this morning. Again, Nikki, to you, and Steve and Bryce for getting us on the air. So ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, we'll see you in about a month. Please be safe, look out for each other, and enjoy the weekend.